here, and then I'll just be a minute or so while I'm looking for something to talk about.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Attackers incoming. Defend objective A.
Okay, I like the attempt to go for the deflect there. Alright, so there we tried to go in aggro like after we were already down some people. So how this is pretty much going to work is I'm going to start just kind of spitting stuff out there. I'll start mentioning things as I see them. When things start to, we'll just kind of put a pin in them for now. But then as they start to come up more than once and start to kind of repeat themselves in patterns, then that's when we're going to kind of talk more in depth on them. So there, just keep in mind we're walking in when we're already down people, when we probably should be backing up rather than going in. So it's just a situation to be paying attention to the environment. Uh-oh. Make sure we're watching, our deflect timer whenever, we're not standing out in the open, so we're not getting killed once the deflect is down. Just keeping an eye on that. Man, that 1 minute queue, it really was a lie, wasn't it?
Yeah, I was just thinking that. I was like, wait, did my game pop? No.
Nice, good kill on the Hanzo there. Okay. I would assume probably one of the biggest things that we could be going for there, and I would assume that maybe that's what we're trying to do, is deflecting the Fire Strike. Now, because Fire Strike is a projectile, you're gonna have time to react to it, and you don't necessarily have to click the deflect before he uses it. And in fact, that's probably gonna be worse because then he's just gonna be able to, not throw it. So you're gonna want to deflect after he Fire Strikes, not before he Fire Strikes, because that's going to allow you to actually get the deflect damage back at him. So just keep it, like, basically stand right behind your Reinhardt, because that's where he's going to be aiming, and then just deflect the Fire Strike as soon as it comes through.
Heroes never die.
Okay, good kill. All right, so I'm noticing. So it's a. Never mind. I'll keep a pin in that in my head. Okay, there we probably could have gone for a dash, so just want to make sure we're paying attention to health bars, right? And when people are low, that's when we can add a dash in. So here, dash is on 1 second, we have dash, right? Mora is like half HP. This is where we could go for a right-click dash and just kill her, but instead we don't, and she's currently still 1 HP, but we kind of still are ignoring her. And then that's an easy kill, we just kind of pass up, so make sure we're looking for people who are low. Dash is a... Okay, and then now we get into that. So why don't we talk about it, because this has now been number 2, the second time that we've seen this. So
Yeah, I think this is a big problem for me. I was
yeah.
kind of thinking about that. Oh, Q just popped.
Oh, okay. That stinks. All right. Well, we'll talk about it at some point. We'll probably talk about it after we'll talk about it after the this game's done. Apologies to YouTube. He does have a very large monitor, so there's gonna be some black bars here.
Statistically speaking, I usually get most of my team back alive, but who's counting?
Snapman, the contested sound is continuing to play in the background here. All right, there we go.
My push to talk is the same in game as this. It's gonna get very confusing for me. So if I'm quiet and not responding, that's why.
Yep. Yeah, I'll try to remind you if you're if you're not responding. Usually, it's a really good idea just to go from some like spawn poke. You just like you can even like go down there because you do have a dash that you can dash back up with, and you just poke a little bit and spawn, and then that way you just get an easy like 10% ult charge-ish. All right, so we're going to probably talk about some, I guess just for now, keep this in mind. We'll talk maybe a little bit more in depth on it, but positioning wise, we're sitting a lot in the main angle, just kind of sitting down main, whereas that's probably not where Genji's going to want to come from. Most likely you're going to want to be coming from the sides and from behind them if possible, whereas we've just kind of been approaching from the front a lot, and then also just, again, we'll touch on it more if we need to, but target priority, we're kind of looking at tanks a lot and probably want to be focusing on the other characters if possible, not shooting at tanks all the time. Okay, there you have a health pack that's kind of right next to you. Make sure we're going for the health pack. And then additionally, we also had deflect there that we didn't use, so it's two different options that we had to possibly keep ourselves alive longer. And then on top of that, something else that came into play there was the thing we're going to talk about after we're done this game. Very nice shot. Alright, yep. Right now we're just kind of stacking up things that we'll talk about after the game's done, and we'll just go in depth on all of them. Once we get those out of the way, then we'll start. Start to talk a little bit more while we're playing. It's mainly that they're gonna take too long to talk about like in between fights, whereas I don't want to be like
Gotcha.
interrupting you while you're going. Okay, some smaller things that I will mention though while we're going along here. First off, I'm noticing that we're tap clicking a lot rather than just holding down our gun. Now that's not going to be terrible in all situations, but it looks like we're just doing it a little bit too often, whereas you're not going to want to kind of purposefully handicap yourself with a slower fire rate. A faster fire rate means you're going to be able to kill things faster, shoot at things faster, do more damage, get more kills. Slower, faster fire rate means that it's overall basically just handicapping yourself, right? The same way that when McCree's fire rate overall was lowered, that was a nerf to the character, right? So we want to just make sure we're not handicapping ourselves just by tap firing instead of just hold down the weapon. There's certain situations where you would tap fire though. There when we had a trance up, maybe probably could have high nooned that, right? Just because we're invincible. Okay, kind of caught out in the open there. That's something we'll talk about after we're done here.
Back into the mix. Fall back.
The payload has reached the checkpoint.
Okay. Don't hold it for so long if like you're out in the open and no cover and like they're just gonna kill you, right? In that situation, we probably should have just
I was just
fired
waiting
as
at
soon
the
as we got it.
reflect.
Yeah, I mean, like even in that situation, like sometimes even I think the Genji even like went around the corner too. Like the deflect wasn't the entire duration that we had it up there. All right, and yeah, okay. So we have a bunch of stuff we'll talk about here.
Right?
I'm still streaming. If you want to go take a look at my screen, we're gonna go over these in practice range. So this is the first thing we'll go over is something we also kind of were about to talk about in the last game we're in, where we just bladed there at the end. So how to tell whether or not a fight is won or lost, right? And how to know that. Mainly, this is going to come down to watching kill feed. Kill feed is the top right corner of your screen. And when we're looking at this, we're going to be able to tell that, right? When we are up 1 to 2 people, that is an advantage, right? When we have an advantage, we can look to play more aggressively. We can look to go in harder, right? Just because they don't have as much to contest us. When we are up 2 to 3 people, that is a one fight. When you've won the fight, which would be that situation, right, where it's like a 6v2, right? That's or a 5v2 or whatever. You have a massive advantage, and in that situation, ulting would just be overkill. It's not going to accomplish anything because you already won the fight, right? So no ults in a one fight, and then make sure you're just getting extra aggressive so you can look to go in and capitalize and kill the rest of the people and stagger them. Now, when you are down 1 to 2 people, this also goes the exact opposite way. That means that you are at a disadvantage, right? Now, you haven't lost the fight yet, but you might want to just basically you haven't lost the fight yet, but you might want to play a little bit more passive because you are losing the fight, it's not lost. Now, when you are down 2 to 3, that is a disadvantage, or not a disadvantage, that is a lost fight, right? At that point, you no longer want to use ults at all because that would just be wasting it because it's not gonna change the fact that it's a lost fight. And then you're also going to want to look to get out if possible, and if you can't get out, you want to let them just kill you, right? So we've seen a couple instances both in just that twice on in the replay that we're watching, and then also a couple times in that game where we just didn't really read the situation correctly and then therefore made a mistake. So make sure we are paying attention to the kill feed because it's a pretty important thing to be paying attention to. All right. Moving on to some other things here. Why don't we talk about positioning next?
Do you have, sorry,
Yep.
this is actually something I've been trying to work on a lot, is I'm pretty bad at watching the kill feed, and like, I know that's something I need to be doing more. Do you, like, I don't know.
Advice on how to work on it?
Yeah, like, I just feel like I just forget about it because I'm so focused on, like, aiming.
So
that-
why don't we, yeah, we'll talk about that. So how does one get better at looking at kill feed, right? Well, one gets better at looking at kill feed the same way that you get better at working on anything that you're trying to work on, and that is to focus on it while you're playing, right? So the same way that you're focusing on your aim while you're playing is the same way that you'd be focusing on the kill feed, right? So when you, for example, right, we're trying to improve on the kill feed, we're not going to want to autopilot, we're not going to want to we're not going to want to just focus on winning, right? Because contrary to popular belief, focusing on winning is actually the easiest way to stagnate and not climb in the long run. Whereas if you're trying to climb in the long run, focusing on improvement is going to be what you're going to be wanting to focus on. So if you're focusing on improvement and the thing you're trying to improve on is watching kill feed or just awareness in general, right? Your brain is going to look something like this, where you're thinking kill feed, kill feed, kill feed, kill feed, kill feed, awareness, 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 right? And when you're doing that, you're giving yourself constant reminders and you're really focusing in on those things. You're going to start to notice that you're paying attention to kill feed a little bit more because we're not tunnel visioning in on our mechanics, right? We're thinking about kill feed. And if we do that for a long enough period of time, then it's going to form as a habit to where now you don't need to focus on it as much, right? It just kind of comes naturally now because it's a habit. Now, after that point, you can look to move on to something else, right? The next thing you need to work on. And then just final thing to talk about there is just we're going to talk about a lot of stuff. Make sure you're not focusing on every single thing at once because that will become overwhelming. Instead, just focus on kind of one category of things or 1 to 3 smaller things within a category, right? And that kind of answer your question or make sense?
Yeah, it actually, I've never really thought about it in the way that, like, I think that I tunnel vision on winning, and I've never thought about it in terms of, like you were just saying. It's a really, like, good tip. Thank you.
Yeah. No problem. Yeah, that's how you're going to, no offense meant, but that's the way that people after plat border 3 stars are going to be still at similar ranks to where they started on day one, right, 5 years ago. So
No, yeah, I mean, I'm looking for that. I am that, so I'm trying to figure out what I
Mhm.
need to change. There's
Exactly,
some
right.
things
And
that like.
just that basic mindset of how improvement works is a very massive thing to change, right? So that's kind of the first step.
Double kill.
All right. So anything else, or am I good to continue
No,
here?
you're good to continue.
All
Sorry.
right. So then second thing we're gonna talk about was positioning. Halfway through here, you can hop and do a queue, though. Not. I'll kind of, I guess, tell you when. It's just I don't want to get into a queue instantly and then not be able to talk about stuff here. But positioning. So basically, if we are standing right here, right, and there's a whole enemy team over there, and they're all looking at us and shooting at us, and we're taking some damage, it takes us 1, 2, 3 seconds to get behind cover. Now from here, you cannot shoot through solid objects. You're good, right? We can't get shot at. We're safe. But in that time it took us to walk here, we died, right? Whereas while we're right here, it takes us half of a second to duck behind cover, right? It's much faster and much safer. So therefore, good positioning is the usage of cover, whereas bad positioning is the absence of cover, right? A lot of times in our games, right, we just were standing smack dab in the middle of nowhere, right, out in the open, and then therefore we died, right? So think of the last High Noon we used. Just kind of standing out in the open, no cover, no shield, no nothing, and then therefore we died. Think of the time on when we were on McCree and we were kind of sitting near, on second point, sitting near the mega health pack, right? And we kind of got caught out of position because we were standing out in the open, no team support. That one was a little bit of a mix of out in the open, but then also we were just probably should have been with our team, right? We just didn't see that they were backing up, and we didn't back up with them, right? So that would have been awareness. Now move back to the positioning thing, right? Just multiple times where we died as a result from this, but then also just where it's not gonna leave you in the best positioning. So on top of this topic, right, there's a lot of different types of positioning. We can use slopes, we can right, we can use pillars where we can in between shots we can go for cover when we're reloading, when we're low health or being ulted at, or people are shooting at us. We have corners like this, we have random objects we find sitting around, you can use the payload like that, right? You have pillar, corner, doorway, corner, right? It's all over the place. And then finally, high grounds, right? All of high grounds act as natural cover. They can see us, can't see us, see us, can't see us, right? On top of that, high grounds act as additional survivability because most characters in the game can't get up to you, right, without using the stairway. So and then the characters that can, right, need to use abilities. So therefore, they're just out of abilities, and that's additional survivability when you're up here. And then finally, it also gives you a ton of visibility. We can see stuff over here, over there, over here, over here, over here, and then also we can see all of the high ground, whereas if we're on a low ground, we can't see over there, not over there, not over there, none of the high ground, right? So just high ground's going to be pretty great as well, and then that's just general positioning and how that works. And we just want to make sure we're looking to respect it. Now moving on to actions per minute. Now this one I think is another pretty massive one. Is that we don't seem to be maximizing our time. So actions per minute is basically just how much are we doing per minute, right? How much are we doing with our time? An easy comparison here is compare a Grandmaster player to a Bronze player. A Grandmaster player is going to be, for the most part, right, they're going to make mistakes, but they're going to be efficient with like every single minute, every single second of their time, right? They're going to be constantly doing something. Whereas a Bronze player might, be going shoot, pew, 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 take a random pause for 5 seconds, and then we're gonna, go shoot, pew, 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 and then we're gonna go, oh, look at the pretty birdies. Oh wait, I'm fighting, right? And they're gonna go shoot, pew, 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 right? So it's very distracted, all over the place. They're not being efficient. They're not constantly doing things. So in our gameplay, just as an example of this, along with random pauses here and there where we just kind of stop shooting and doing things in the middle of fights, there's also a really good example of this is unnecessary reloads. So on McCree, we'll swap over to McCree here so you can see this easily. We have 6 shots. We would like shoot once, twice, and then have other people on our screen that we could shoot at and just reload after that, right? Or we would shoot once and then reload, or we'd shoot 3 times and then reload. How reloading works is if you can still be shooting at people, don't reload because you want to still be shooting at them. If you have no one to shoot at, right, then we can reload all we want because there's nobody to shoot at, right? So we want to make sure that when we can be doing things, that we're doing things, and when we can't, then that anytime there's a lull in a fight where we have time to reload, you want to add in a reload so we have ammo. So let's say we're rotating, right? So we're down here, then we decide to go up top. We can reload here anytime we're low HP and we're ducking behind cover. Whenever we can't see somebody, right? We're reloading, but there are situations where we just kind of reload randomly in the middle of shooting at people, right? And then that just means that we can't really do things as easily. So that's just an example, along with just other random times where we would just pause while shooting. And then on top of that, that kind of gets into another thing that's kind of added in there was what I said in game while you're playing is just kind of tap firing, where we were just like we'd kind of do this and just tap the button rather than just holding down the button and shooting at the fastest fire rate possible, which is going to get us the most damage, and that kind of goes into actions per minute as well. Right? Does that all make sense?
Yeah, it does. I didn't even realize I was doing that.
So then, kind of, let's think. Was there anything else I want to talk about? I think you can go ahead and get in a queue. I'm gonna think here for a moment. I can't, not recalling if there's anything else. Ultimate usage with McCree. We just kind of did it. Oh yeah, that's what we're gonna talk about. We're gonna talk about approaching from the side. So real quick, I don't think this one is like as big as the other ones we're talking about. This one's not as big as important as those, but it's still a thing. So keep that in mind. Is target priority. So just real quick, we'll go over that. Also, just let me know whenever you get into a game. So target priority real quick is just make sure we're not shooting at tanks pretty much. Tanks have 2 to 3 times the health of other characters. They have shields, tanking abilities, armor. They're just much harder to kill than other things. And then on top of that, supports and DPS just output more statistical value. Now, tanks are a very important role and they can do a whole lot, but their job is to create space for the other roles, whereas the DPS are the ones who do damage and supports are the ones who do healing. Therefore, they're the ones who output the statistics and they're who we want to kill. Now, that's kind of the first thing here is just make sure we're shooting at tanks, but then the follow-up to that is the positioning that comes along with that. A lot of times you just sat on the main angle. So if the enemy team's standing there, our team standing here.
I'm sorry, I got a little lost right there. Sorry.
Yeah.
So the target priority, can you just like repeat the last like 10, 20 seconds?
Yeah. So let's see, where was 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Don't shoot at tanks, shoot at DPS or supports. Tanks do tanking, and they
Gotcha.
create space. Yeah. Good.
I thought that's what you were saying, but then I thought at the end that you said shoot at tanks, and I was like, wait,
No.
what? I was.
I was saying that you were shooting at tanks.
Oh, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
So here we're gonna say that this is where the enemy team is. This is where our team is. This is the main angle, right? If we're just sitting here and shooting, which is kind of what we were doing for the last couple of games, that means that we're going to be shooting at shields and tanks the entire time, right? We're not going to be able to be very effective. Whereas, let's say we just came over here real quick. Well, now we just can get past the tanks, past the shields, right, and kind of immediately onto the back line, right? We can maybe poke them out, get a pick, be a distraction, get a crossfire effect from over here, where you're basically just being a distraction and taking resources away from the front line. And then we can just very easily back out. So that means that this is what you call an off angle. It's just a different angle from the main angle, and it's going to be very fast and very safe. Another example of this would be enemy team there, our team here, main angle, and off angle would just be this, right, where we just come up here. Now, tanks and shields don't bother us. We can get immediately into the back line, right? Very fast, very safe. We can get back to our team pretty much immediately. We have a high ground advantage. All of high grounds, when they are above somebody, act as off angles. Now, this doesn't act an off angle to those guys, but it would if they were like right here, right? And then just real quick to define an off angle versus a flank, so you don't end up confusing the two. A flank would be if we went all the way around, all the way around, all the way around, all the way around. Okay, so now we just took twice as long. In that time, our team could be losing the fight. Now this is also much more dangerous because we are a lot further away from our team, and we're also don't have a high ground to help us out. So all flanks are inherently long and or dangerous. So probably not going to want to go for flanks nearly as much as just off angles whenever we have the option. On Genji, you have a little bit of survivability with your abilities, and you have a little bit of extra movement speed than other characters, so you can survive on flanks a little bit better than other characters can, but I'd still probably say you're not going to want to go for them a ton. It's just kind of when the situation calls for it, but most of the time, yes to off angles. Flanks are a little bit more iffy, especially on different characters. Genji's one of the characters that can go on them a little bit. Soldier and Tracer would be characters like where you can go on them probably a lot more. McCree is a character where you pretty much only go for it when you're ulting, right? It's just, you know, it differs a little bit across different characters, right? That'll make sense too.
They did, yeah.
Yep. So let's see. Is there anything else? Thinking through here. All right. I'm gonna talk about McCree High Noon. So McCree High Noon, we just kind of sat out in the open when we used it the last game you're in. Probably not going to want to do that for the same thing we talked about with our positioning, right? Not going to sit on the open, but other ways that you can get off a High Noon without just killing yourself, right? Because you don't want it to be just a press Q and I die button, right? You want to actually survive while you use it. So ways that you can survive are like kind of 3 different main ways. First off, you can use it from behind cover. So if you use it from like behind the shield, for example, right? Just sit behind your team, sit inside of them, sit behind your shields, and then boom, you have a bunch of safety. But the issue with this is that means most of the time you're just going to be sitting down main, and it means that you're going to have not the best of a High Noon through it.
My queue just popped.
All right, sounds good. I'll just talk about these real quick while you're loading in, right? So just it's basically going to be a really low risk, low reward High Noon, right? Secondly, you can go for a flank or an off angle when you High Noon for a surprise High Noon, right? This one is probably like a depending on the situation, probably more so like a medium risk, high reward High Noon. A lot of the times, that's going to be ones that you try to go for. Those are really good options, right? Because it's it's gonna get you a lot of reward because you get around the shields and tanks and whatnot, which are gonna be the hardest things to get through while you're High Nooning. And then the other option is to like be really far away from the enemy team while you're doing it, so they can't really shoot you. This only works really if they don't have any long range characters that can actually shoot at you, right?
Triple kill.
Keep 'em
So we just want to make sure we're using one of those. I'm going to actually, you know what? Can you possibly like real quick link me your battle tag just so I can friend you in game, and then that way I can actually just spectate you and won't have to have the black bars. Thank you. Apologies if you lose this first fight.
No worries.
Okay, I stopped watching.
Now entering King's Row.
Alright, I'm on you now.
Please move behind the barrier.
Okay, here, in between fights, we just, keeping up with actions per minute, we just kind of want to spam. We want to do a bunch of damage, whittle down their shields, basically get a bunch of ult charge along with that, nice ability usage. So we just want to make sure that, like, in between fights, we're not just kind of sitting around doing nothing, but we can just put in spam damage. Good ability usage. Honestly, ability usage has been looking like one of our stronger suits. We'll talk about strengths and weaknesses after this game's up, real quick.
Adaptive circuits engaged. Sombra.
Okay, really good copy. I like the character we went for there, and good EMP. The only thing I would say is maybe instead of just plopping yourself down on top of them, you could have like stayed on top of the roof right above you here, or you could have stayed on top of the statue or something like that, so you're not just like standing inside of them.
Oh, good point.
Right, that way you have more survivability. Right, so you see like kind of that roof like kind of right over the hotel. There, when you're trying to get the Reinhardt, just boost over top of him rather than into him. Alright, just be a little bit more efficient to get the beam on top of him. And then, yeah.
System reboot complete. Focus my target.
Make sure you cancel it if they're actually full H, like if they get healed up or they're not actually low HP, because then it's just gonna be doing a tiny little bit of tickle damage, and you just would rather cancel it than have it stay up. Good job canceling it there. I like to see us flying kind of up in the air more often, like just basically something we just kind of do off a cooldown just to get like good off that. Basically think of it as an off angle because you're getting up above them the same way a high ground would do that, right? You can get it past shields, kind of get above them. Just be careful with it because now they like, you know, have a McCree, so we just have to be careful we're not suiciding. Still use cover up in the air because there is cover in the air. Nice ability usage. Yep, like there, just make sure canceling it, right? That way you're not just doing no damage.
Good.
Well, if so,
The
they're
orb.
good. So yeah, they're two different things. First off, just you know, knowing he's there faster by just being aware of our environments and listening and watching for him, like, you know, paying attention to flank angles. Right, they have a McCree. Like, where's he at? On top of that, potentially there we could have copied him, which would save us from dying. Right, just keep that in mind as you can use it as kind of a get out of jail free card when you're about to die, and then that can keep you alive and allow you to still have an impact. Sometimes even if it's not the best character to be copying, right?
Focus with me. Mobility increased. Adaptive circuits engaged. Reinhardt. Personality duplication complete.
Okay, there we kind of went in like 1v3, make sure that even if we're in a copy, we probably don't want to do that so we can actually survive through our ultimate. Nice stickies.
Focus my target. Less than ideal.
On top of that, make sure that while we're ulting on Reinhardt, like it's your ultimate acts as a cone. If we're trying to get a bunch of people in it, usually you're going to want to walk backwards from them. You're kind of like inside of them. How are you going to get 3 people like if you're on top of them? So just back up away from them. That way you can see all of them in front of you. Though, of course, you're not a Reinhardt player, so no faults there.
Moving up. Shutting them down.
Is that melody?
Lock on my target.
Okay, very nice.
Heroes never die. Adaptive circuits engaged. Reinhardt.
Massive shatter.
Echo online. You'd better learn quickly.
There, couple things. First off, when you first ult, something you could... Alright, I'll talk after you're done. All right. First thing is right as you're ulting, something you could have done there maybe was to like drop it right behind the Reinhardt and like charge him back into your team is an option you have. Secondly, when just make sure that you're focusing on survivability even while you're in your ultimate. It does last pretty long. 15 seconds is like one of the longer ultimates in the game, and we want to make sure that we're surviving through it because then we can maybe get like multiple ultimates right while we're going. So
Right.
in that situation, just like don't keep swinging if you're like 100 HP, right? Just shield up, let your team heal you up. That way you're not getting de-Reinhardted. All right, so we'll talk about a couple things here. Honestly, I'll just skip the strengths and weaknesses part. We'll cover that at the end. Usually I do it kind of mid and then end, but we kind of missed that on accident. So I'm streaming still. Here we're going to talk about a couple things. So first off, talking about crosshair placement. Are you familiar with the term? Push talk maybe.
Sorry.
Yeah, you're good.
What did you say?
I said first thing we're talking about here is crosshair placement. Are you familiar with that term?
Like not outside of just like literally.
Yeah, so crosshair placement is basically just placing your crosshair in the best place possible to hit the easiest and most shots, right? So the first massive step to this is making sure that we're constantly aiming at head level. So basically that means that if we're aiming here, there's a lot more adjustment to be made, and headshots do a whole lot more damage than body shots. 2 tap versus 2, 3, 4 tap, right? 2 times the damage we're doing when we're hitting headshots. So when we're having to adjust up and as well as to the side, that's more distance than if you just go side to side. And the further your crosshair has to travel, the harder a shot is to hit, and then therefore this is just a lot easier of a shot to hit when we just have to go side to side, right? Now that means that Echo's a pretty spammy character, right? You're just spamming down corridors, spamming a shield. You're doing that a lot of that last game. But let's say a couple slip past the shields break. We're shooting, or just our default like shooting level, right? If we're aiming at body level, we're just hitting body shots. But if we aim up here, now all of our default shots just become headshots, right? Just doing a lot more damage. You see how much more we're kind of getting out of that when we're just aiming there. So we want to make sure we're walking around aiming at this level. So we can actually hit headshots when we're just spamming too. Now the second step to crosshair placement is aiming where we know people are going to be. So I don't think this, I'll just add it in there because it usually kind of pairs with it. But so for example, someone walks top left, we're pre-aiming at head level so that when he comes around the corner, we're just already aiming at his head, right? Very easy shots because we made it easy on ourselves. He's left side, so we're gonna pre-aim looking left side at head level. So when we turn the corner, we're already looking at his head. These guys are on a little bit of a slope, so in the same way that we look down on a Torbjorn and up on a tank, we're going to look down on these guys, right? So when we turn the corner, we're pretty much already looking at his head, right? So we're just doing extra damage, right? And then that means more kills, easier kills, right? Flying, probably not gonna want to do this too often. Now, kind of my opinion on this, it's kind of a weird thing. Because I used to play Echo a ton, I did like a test on this where I tested like which one's faster, just flying using the entire duration, or just kind of doing that like skip fly where you just like fly normally. Because the theory was like, okay, well if I get the cooldown faster, then I'm gonna be going faster, right? I'm gonna be doing it more often. But I actually found it's pretty much the exact same speed in which you can travel a long distance. So the difference I would use between the two is just anytime you're just moving somewhere, usually just do a regular fly. That way you have more control over your mobility. You can alter it a lot more. But if you're trying to get somewhere like really fast and kind of burst at them, then that's where the kind of tap comes into play. So like
Oh.
So like for example, we're trying to get up to like this guy real quick. We just do that, right? We just like tap it upwards, right? Holding spacebar while you're doing it. I think a couple times we kind of like tapped it while we went forwards. If you're trying to go up, you want to press the spacebar while you're doing it. And then that is, I believe, pretty much it. And then yeah, I think we'll cover. We have like probably like 4 more minutes here until we go over the main points in the review. That might just be the entire queue time. Would you like to just go over that replay that we had and the remaining time here?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So that was just the Volskaya game, I believe.
Traveling to Volskaya, ready for battle.
Okay, so it was somewhere right when we, used our ultimate after we won the fight. All right. Yeah, okay. So here just make sure we're not pushing forward super far without our
Yeah.
team. And then on top of that, like, here I would just probably expect him to push us. So a really easy thing we can do is just not sit here and back out. Like, for example, let's just say we dashed over to here and got around this as cover, right? Just using cover. We could dash out and use this as cover. We just have a lot of options here. We don't want to just kind of sit still. If we even wanted to, we could probably just, like, dash over here and just walk over to the Mega. Just don't, like, sitting still is probably just the worst thing we could probably be doing here.
Alright.
Because then that just gets, they just push us and then we
Yeah.
die. And then that can potentially just ruin our momentum. Okay, now we do get rezzed. And notice how we're like looking really far down and you just kind of see the crosshair placement. And then that's just going to mean like even on a character like Genji, we want to be aiming ahead level. Oh. Yep, that's a grab dragon. Not much we can do there.
Team kill.
Again.
Alright, so let's retake a look at this a little bit. So first off, we're in, like, we're doing things here. I think we're trying to go over and duel the Hanzo, which honestly is a pretty decent play to make. But we kind of, like, we see him, and then we kind of don't go for him there, so just probably, and then now we're just kind of stuck spamming down the main. One thing just playstyle wise that you'll probably find really helpful on Genji, and just kind of the misconception a lot of Genjis have, is that Genji is not just a play to get blade character. When you are just play to get blade, you're basically ignoring half of all of his kit, and what you'll find, in fact, when you're playing to actually do things outside of blade, that's where you're going to get more value, but then also just more ult charge in general than if you're just poking, right? Really, the only time on Genji that you should just be flat out spam poking is in between fights where there's nothing else to do, or when you're like really close to getting your ultimate, right? Other than that, when you're like 40, 30 to your ultimate, there's no reason to just sit main and poke and do nothing, right? Right. On top of
Right.
that, we kind of are also engaging when we've already lost the fight here. Like we see we're down like 3 people, right? It's just no 2 people. No, sorry, 1 person. My bad. Doomfist, you just can't see him, right? So we're down 1 person, and then Doomfist is about to die, so now we're down 2 people, and we're kind of dashing in aggro. So we just want to make sure we're looking to do things outside of just our blade, and therefore we want to look to go get kills.
I have a question.
Yep, go ahead.
So like right there watching this back, again,
Mhm.
I felt like what I felt when I was playing it. Like I didn't really know what to do. Like
Mm-hmm.
in the situations where I feel like, okay, we're probably not losing this, but my team is committing. Do I commit with them, or do I just like back out? I don't know.
Yeah, so in this situation, I'd probably say, like, it's close enough to where it's not a big deal. Like, I think I saw the Doomfist dying, like, the big thing is that, like, if we see Doomfist dying here, that's something that would be when we would back out. But honestly, I think it's fine that we engage. There's
I
not a
just
big issue.
yeah.
I kind of called that one a little bit early. Before seeing us, like, before seeing the whole situation. I think the more so the big issue is that we just didn't really do too much during this fight. It wasn't that we died here, because dying here is honestly not too terrible because it's dying at the same time as the rest of our team.
Okay.
All right. We'll go like 1 more minute here. Actually, why don't we exit out here? So now we're gonna just go over all the main points of the session, and then also just mix in a review while we go along, and then finally we'll just wrap up the session from there. So point number one, let's see. So I don't think it was ability usage or ultimate usage. Those two seem like the most solid out of everything we had. Mechanics definitely had a lot of things, positioning a lot of things, and then awareness had a lot of things. So those are really the big ones that we're looking at the moment. I think we're going to put mechanics as number one. One thing I forgot to ask that I wanted to ask is sometimes our shots looked a little bit shaky. What sensitivity do you currently have? And DPI as well, if you know that.
Yeah, the DPI is 800, and the sensitivity I use in game. Honestly, I've been kind of messing around with it on Genji because I feel like I can't 180 fast enough, or I'm shaky. Like, but with everyone else, I think it's 325.
325. Okay, and then what did you have on Genji?
I have him at like 6.
Okay. And then do you have a large mouse pad?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, I personally played Genji a little bit. I have probably a pretty similar one. I don't have as low. I run an 800 by 450. Honestly, sensitivities look fine. I was just gonna to ask about that. Just it seemed like sometimes even like on Echo, just we looked a little bit shaky with our aim. So I was just gonna wonder about that. Not too big of an issue then. Just make sure we're concentrating on hitting shots. So mechanics, right? Just talk about that category real quick. Bunch of different things to go into this. First off, crosstalk placement that we just went over. I don't need to go into depth on that because we just talked about it. On top of that, we have other things in this category would be target priority, aiming at DPS and supports, not tanks. And then also in this category, we have actions per minute, which is just making sure we're constantly doing things and not taking random breaks and pauses, and actively participating, like on a character like Genji, where we just want to make sure we're participating outside of just Blade and going and doing things, not kind of just sitting around and poking, right? Because that's just kind of his place, a different play style that you want to be playing. And then besides that, I think that those were the main ones on our mechanics category. Number two, I'm probably going to put at this one's hard. Because I think it kind of changed from game to game. Like definitely in the replay that you showed me, and then in the McCree game that you were on, positioning definitely seemed like the worst one, but then or the worser one. But then awareness did seem like it was a kind of continuous problem through all of them. So that one's pretty tough. Honestly, I might kind of combine them, and just keep in mind that all these top ones are very, very similar in how much you need to work on them. It's kind of like all tied up for like 8 out of 10 priority-ish, right, of how much you need to work on them, whereas the other two are probably sitting more so at like 5 out of 10-ish, right? It's like just not as big of a deal. Honestly, it might even be less than that, but like 4 out of 10-ish. So they're all really close. We'll just tie up awareness and positioning, but we'll do a quick review of them. So positioning, make sure we're not out in the open, right? So that we're not dying. That was a pretty massive one on McCree because we just died a lot, and then that meant that we weren't getting a lot of value. I think the thing is that we kind of see McCree doesn't how it works is like when you're running faster characters that have more survivability, you kind of have a band-aid over bad positioning, whereas when you don't have those, like for a character like McCree, positioning becomes more important and more apparent. Though it still is a thing on all of them, so that's kind of why I think it was that we didn't see it on some of the other characters that we were running. But in any case, right, make sure we're not standing on the open. Make sure that we are not just sitting on the main angle all the time, but we're trying to take off angles when they're an option, flanks in certain situations, though not all the time if possible. On top of that, make sure that we're taking high grounds, because high grounds are pretty great positioning. And then on McCree, just make sure we're not, standing out in the open while we're high nooning. Instead, we're, taking. We'll talk about that when we get to McCree, right? Now, awareness, watching kill feed, right? That was a pretty big one as it went through multiple games and situations. Just as a quick reminder, it's 1 to 2 is advantage or disadvantage. 2 to 3 is a won or lost fight. No ult in a won or lost fight, and then you also want to look to in a one fight, get super aggressive, and then in a lost fight, get out if possible. If you can't get out, just let them kill you. And then on from that, awareness, a couple other things, paying attention to, kind of what is our team up to, what is the enemy team up to. There's sometimes like, where McCree would sneak up behind us and we wouldn't notice, or we react late to it, or where our team, we just wouldn't be paying attention to where they were at and we'd go in without them, like kind of when we were on Echo and we swapped to Reinhardt and kind of went in 1v3. All right, just paying attention to where's my team, where's the enemy team. Don't just kind of walk forwards in a straight line all the time doing slow pans. We want to look left, we want to look right, we want to do a 360, pay attention to our surroundings, right, so that we know what's up, what's going on, and then therefore it's going to allow us to make better decisions. On from there, were there any other awareness things? Let's think through that for a second. Honestly, I think that those were the main ones. So honestly, I might put awareness at slightly lower than positioning. So we will in fact separate the two. We'll put awareness at number 3. We'll put positioning at number 2, right? And then on to number 4, right? I probably put ability usage. Ability usage on Genji. Make sure we're dashing when we see people are low HP. That's another thing that goes into awareness, is watching health bars, right? Besides that, make sure we're deflecting after we see projectiles and Reinhardt Fire Strike, not before we do see them. Let's see, what other characters we ran? We ran Echo. Sticky Bombs, pretty okay. Make sure we're not using them on Sombra before she just teleports away, though, right? So we're not doing it like that.
Oh, right, I didn't even think about that.
Usually it's a good idea, or at least don't use both your abilities. Sometimes you can you can shoot her a couple times, or you can throw your sticky bombs, and then after she translocates away, you probably still want to have your cooldowns, because basically you use one ability as kind of the bait, so to make her translocate, and then if you don't want to just use both of them, where sometimes we do this and then beam immediately, and then she would just teleport out afterwards. Then beam usage, I think you already got better with this one, but just make sure canceling it when it's not needed. With our fly, make sure going up in the air to get an off angle. Make sure in the air we're still using cover, such as buildings and rooftops and whatnot. Then besides that, just we talked about the difference between just normal flying and then also just using the kind of speed boost thing above. I don't know what to call that, the big jump. And then on from there, we played McCree too. McCree, I didn't see anything with her abilities. So then final one is just ultimate usage. Make sure when you copy people on Echo that you're looking to have survivability, so don't just drop into the middle of their team if you're on Sombra. And on Reinhardt, make sure you're shielding yourself, right? Just focus on staying alive. McCree, focus on staying alive when you're ulting too. That seems to be the common consensus on your ultimates, right? Just stay alive while you're using them.
Alive.
Yeah. So McCree ultimate, we have 3 different things we can use. First off, you can use cover, or not cover, team support, right? Protection, shields, teammates, which is going to be low priority, or low risk, low reward. We could take off angles and flanks, which is going to be kind of a medium risk, high reward, or that kind of mixes around depending on the off angle, because that can vary a lot. And then finally, you have just sitting really far away, which is going to be just a kind of all over the place. It really depends on the situation, right? Do you have any questions about anything we've talked about?
No, this has been super helpful though.
Yep, and then just one final reminder is just make sure that we are focusing on the things we're trying to work on, right? To start off with the big ones at the top, because those are the most important things to work on. Just take it one at a time. Make sure you're focusing on them, not autopiloting or just focusing on winning, and then try to really improve, right? That's kind of the goal here, right? So then if there's nothing else, I'm just going to stop the recording there.